Good evening to our guests here on site, and good evening to our guests online joining us from Japan and in the region. Good morning to our guests online joining us from Switzerland, Europe, and beyond. My name is Gregor Muischneck. I'm the head of the Economy and Finance section here at the Embassy of Switzerland, and I will be your guide for tonight's economic forum. In order to get our online audience on board, we would like to just make a few technical remarks at the beginning. The forum is entirely bilingual and in English and Japanese. So please, on your Zoom environment, use the interpretation bottom at the bottom of your Zoom interface to switch between the two languages. In terms of interaction, for our online audience, we have opened the Q&A function. So at any time during the event tonight, please feel free to put your questions in that chat. We will make sure to translate them either into English or Japanese, and we will do our level best to answer them during the forum or also after the event. Ladies and gentlemen, the Switzerland-Japan Economic Forum is a joint initiative by the Swiss Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Japan, by the IMD, the International Institute for Management Development, and the Embassy of Switzerland in Japan. Each year, we bring together representatives of business, academia, government to discuss a theme that is of mutual interest to both our countries, Japan and Switzerland, but also beyond. In order to open this 5th edition of the Switzerland-Japan Economic Forum, it's now my pleasure to invite the Ambassador of Switzerland, Dr. Andreas Baum, to the podium to give his opening remarks and also to introduce the theme of the forum tonight. Mr. Baum, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear participants online, dear guests here at the Swiss residence in Tokyo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Switzerland-Japan Economic Forum. Climate change, a global pandemic, war, and economic transformation. We find ourselves in a whirlwind of crises and unrelenting, accelerating change. It can be stressful, it can be exhausting. It should not come as a surprise, therefore, that interest in vitality and well-being, including in the workplace, has increased dramatically. Academics are conducting research, innovators are developing new technologies, corporate leaders are reviewing management practices, and governments are proposing new incentives. Today, we want to take stock of some of these efforts, and we want to look into the future. What does vitality mean? What impact does it have on productivity and performance? Can we really manage well-being? What role can and should cutting-edge technologies play? These are just some of the questions which we seek to address today. In order to do so, we have brought together some of the brightest minds in the field from Japan and Switzerland. They will share their insights, experience, and outlook with us. Hopefully, a source of takeaway for each one of us, which we can then apply in our own organizations. The Economic Forum is organized in the framework of Vitality.Swiss, Switzerland's campaign on the road to Expo 2025, Osaka, Kansai. In line with the Expo's theme of designing future society for our lives, the program explores ways to increase vitality at the individual and societal levels. We seek to foster collaborations between Switzerland and Japan in the domains of innovation, sustainability, and health. We look at health from a broad perspective. Besides life sciences, health tech, or precision medicine, we also want to address questions of well-being, including work-life balance or nutrition. According to the international rankings, Switzerland is a location of healthy living, but we can do better. Let me illustrate this with a number that shows the economic significance and the business case of what we're discussing today. The Swiss Foundation for Health Promotion estimates that the Swiss economy would stand to gain 6.5 billion Swiss francs or 950 billion Japanese yen in 2022 if all employees had a well-balanced working environment. With the support of the Swiss government, the foundation offers innovative tools and incentives to improve workplace health management. We will hear more about this later. A record number of sponsors have come on board for this edition of the Economic Forum. I want to thank them for their generous support. Let me also thank our co-organizers and partners, the Swiss Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Japan, and IMD, the International Institute for Management Development, for their efforts in bringing us together today. I wish you all an insightful economic forum, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Baum, for your welcome remarks and for setting the tone for tonight's forum. Now, in the first part of tonight's discussions, we want to explore the role of technology in supporting vitality. Let me introduce our tandem of moderators who will lead us through the discussion. They are both from our organizing partner, IMD, and fittingly for this forum, they build a bridge between Switzerland and Japan and between the virtual world and the real world. So let me first turn online and very warmly welcome Alison Meister. She is a professor of leadership and organizational behavior at IMD, and she joins us from the Institute headquarters in Lausanne, Switzerland. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here on stage at the Swiss residence in Tokyo, it's my pleasure to introduce Takatsu Naoshi. He is the IMD's managing partner for Northeast Asia. And welcome, Naoshi. And let me hand over directly to you and to Alison online to start with this first panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very kind introduction. This is Naoshi, live from the Swiss residence here in Tokyo. And I'm truly happy to be here. My colleague Alison on the other side of the planet, who's joining us from Lausanne, Switzerland, will present the relevance of these two discussions that we're going to have, and also one of the three speakers on the panel one. Alison, please.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here and to meet you all, even if virtually. Thank you for having me and us from here in Lausanne. We're really thrilled, and I'm personally very excited about the topic of today's forum. I think it couldn't be more relevant, more exciting, and more pertinent for society, for organizations, and for individuals alike. As you've heard, mental health has been declining significantly in the past few years in the wake of the pandemic, and it's accelerating further. So at work, nearly 50% of people feel stressed on a daily basis, and they're feeling the symptoms of burnout. Only 30% of people feel that they're actually thriving at work and beyond work at home as well. But there is hope. The World Economic Forum estimates that for every $1 spent, 4 are returned to the economy. And we see this happening. The wellness market has grown 30% since 2020. We see innovation in real estate. We see innovation in technology. We see changing health and wellness conversations and dialogue happening all over the world. Governments, organizations, and leaders are starting to stand up and take notice. And it's moving to the top of the leadership agenda. So on that, we have a wonderful panel here to speak to you today. One panel, the first panel to focus on the role of technology in supporting vitality, well-being, and managing stress. And then in the second panel, we will talk about how we take this into workplace practices, what we can do at work, and what organizations are doing to lead the way. So Naoshi and I would love to introduce you to our very first panel. And I'm going to start with introducing you to Vlad Georgiou. And then I'll pass it to you, Naoshi, to introduce the in-person audience. So as you can see, my colleague Vlad is up on the screen. Vlad is an entrepreneur and founder and co-CEO of Cayenne Health. He has more than 10 years experience in organizational health and performance at McKinsey & Company, where he built and led employee mental health and well-being programs for more than 30,000 people around the globe. And Cayenne Health was incorporated in 2021 and is the first digital health company here in Switzerland. And they've grown rapidly to more than 50 people now across Europe. They work with several well-known global international organizations, and their purpose is really to provide fully personalized, evidence-based mental health and well-being for employees and their families. So they have, for example, an application that employees can use that provides diagnostics and makes real-time suggestions for well-being strategies, for coaching or therapy, tips and solutions for well-being. And their solution engages more than 30 to 40% of the organizations they work with. So we're excited to learn about this technology and how they're using technology to drive mental health, vitality, and well-being. And I'll pass it to you, Naoshi, to introduce our other two panelists this morning.
Oh, thank you very much, Alison. So let me introduce Mr. Hazama Koji right here. He is the executive officer of Exa Wizards, which is a company that aims to provide aims to solve social issues through AI. Hazama-san leads its care and med tech division, and today he is going to share with us the insights he gained from development of a service to achieve well-being for workers by using AI for two issues. One, the assessment of mental health of the employees, and two, matching of appropriate care with individuals. And thank you for being with us. Thank you very much. And let me also introduce Dr. Yano Kazuo over there. He is the fellow of Hitachi Limited with an outstanding career in researches and inventions. He and his co-workers have succeeded in quantifying the happiness of and founded Happiness Planet Limited in 2020. And he is now the CEO of it. He argues that he has found the factor X of productive and happy organizations. Intriguing, isn't it? And the Happiness Planet now supports hundreds of companies in increasing their productivity and well-being. We cannot wait to hear Yano-san's insights. So please welcome Dr. Yano. Thank you very much for joining us. So Alison, over to you. You can start your session with that.
Thank you. Thank you. And so again, if anybody listening has any questions for any of our speakers as we get going, please do put them in the chat and we will do our best to make sure everything gets answered. So Vlad, welcome. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Alison.
I'd love to kick off by just hearing a little bit about your story. So with a background in consulting and McKinsey, what brought you to this field? How was Cayenne Health born? And what is it seeking to do?
Yeah, so as these things usually happen, it started with my own personal story. So after more than 10 years in consulting, where my goal is really to progress as fast as possible, I found myself going through a pretty severe burnout in 2019. And that led me to actually take some time off, reassess, and actually start therapy for the very first time. And in that process, I realized that those tools and resources and the relationship with the therapist was really helpful and could have actually prevented the crisis in the first place. So when I came back, I filmed a short video recounting the experience that I had. You see, I didn't want to make an excuse for the reason I was away. And in my surprise, more than hundreds of colleagues reached out with very similar experiences. Questions like, how do I explain to my manager that this is happening? Is it the end of my career? Where can I get some support to deal with what I'm going through right now? And so based on that, I did a research internally and was asked to build and to lead the global mental health program for more than 30,000 people. And as it happens, it was right before the first wave of the pandemic. So also a very much needed initiative for people who found themselves at home or supporting childcare at the same time and really going through a very difficult time. And then following that, I did it for around 18 months and realized a lot of our clients were going through similar challenges. Big corporate clients that also had to manage mental health of their employees. So then in January 2021, alongside my two co-founders, we decided to increase our reach and really take Kian Health to the world with a mission to make mental well-being a superpower. And happy to talk a bit more about how we do that.
Yeah, exactly. That would be perfect. So Kian was born helping to help organizations and people make mental health their superpower. And it's clearly based on technology. Tell us about the technology. Tell us about a little bit about how you seek to achieve that goal and kind of how it all works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a slide here that might help illustrate how we think about using technology to bridge the gap or to move from what has traditionally been a very limited understanding of mental health into what we like to think of as a state of well-being. So if we think about health and safety management, there's a very narrow understanding still in many parts of the world as managing crisis or infirmity almost, right? If you look on the chart on the left-hand side of the page, it's really the red part. It's people who no longer work effectively or who really have to take a long-term disability leave and sort of managing those situations and ideally also finding a way for them to come back to work. But according to the World Health Organization, the definition of health is a state of well-being. So it implies a much broader understanding of health management. And that's really what we like to do with Kian Health. But this transition is not easy, because we oftentimes find ourselves not thinking about health until we have some signs or some signals and triggers that make us think about health. So this is where the role of technology is very powerful as a behavioral change tool. And the way we think about it at Kian Health is through 3 steps. The biggest barrier to taking action when it comes to mental health is lack of self-awareness. And going back to my own example 3 years ago, I actually didn't know that I was on a path to burnout until I was literally experiencing panic attacks and I knew I had to change something. So oftentimes this lack of self-awareness prevents people from taking action. And our response to this with Kian is we promote self-awareness through various tools, from mood trackers to different self-assessments that people can take regularly to understand themselves better, to understand what moves them up in terms of well-being and what situations or interactions move them towards the left of this chart. And over time, they build a better understanding. But that understanding is only as good as knowing what to do with it. So the second step is clear recommendations for self-care. Essentially guiding people towards the right tools and resources to manage their own well-being over time. So this is what we developed is a set of cognitive behavioral therapy-based exercises. It includes mindfulness meditations, hypnotherapy, and various tools that people can do at home or on their way to work to really prepare for the day and manage their well-being. And the third element is about having access to expert care in pretty much at your fingertips, right? So we see that there's a huge barrier to reaching out for help. And oftentimes, if we have to go through the health system of a country, that becomes even more difficult because of long waiting times and difficult accessing people. So our goal was to really make it very easy for people to have a first session with a counselor, with a coach, or with a therapist. And then over time, to build a trusted relationship and really feel supported on their day-to-day basis. And finally, the beauty of it is what we like to call blended care is the combination of expert care with self-care so that you never really feel alone, right? It's not just 1 hour a week and then, we don't have structure, but rather 1 hour a week or 1 hour every 2 weeks, and then a guided self-care work that can help improve and manage your resilience over time.
Oh, what I find fascinating about this is that you're combining technology with human interaction. So it's not just technology, but it's technology enabling and almost working together with the human side. And so before I pass it to Naoshi for questions on that side on this, what do you see any risks in technology when it comes to mental health? We hear a lot about, people being tied to their mobile phones and the need to detach. How do you work with that risk, or is it a risk in your mind?
Yes, it absolutely is. And as with any powerful tool, it can be, both a blessing or a big challenge, right? And we see this with youth in particular, as the impact of social media is really taking a big toll on their minds, right? And their ability to focus and remain concentrated on a task has significantly been reduced over the past years. So our belief is that technology is a very powerful tool, but that should be used mindfully. And this also applies to how we look at people using the KN Health app. We don't want them to spend hours on end doing cognitive behavioral therapy exercises. We want them to do or to experience a limited time interaction that really boosts their well-being, their understanding, and then they can integrate those things into real life. So I think our understanding is technology is as powerful, is a very powerful tool, as long as it helps you cope and manage real life better and doesn't provide an escape for real life.
I love that perspective. And Naoshi, what are your thoughts, or do you want to direct any questions from the live side?
So Hazama-san and Yano-san, if you have any questions or comments on Doctor?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I'm not very I'm not good. I'm not very clear that what is the basic cycle of the user in daily lives in your app.
Yeah, so happy to answer that. So it really starts with a need to understand oneself better. Most of our users don't download the app planning to start therapy or to speak with a coach, but are really curious and want to understand, how are they feeling on a day-to-day basis? Typically, why are they waking up in the morning and don't really feel energized or really feel depleted at the end of the day? So it starts with a need to really get to know those things about oneself. And then we really try to guide people towards the exercises and the tools that they need to increase their overall level of well-being. If we go back to the chart shown earlier, to move from wherever they are on the slide a little bit towards the right. And for some people, that means listening to or building a meditation habit. For other people, it may mean speaking with a coach. And our role is to really help them understand what it is that would help them move towards the right, and then provide it in a frictionless way.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I found some similarities. Actually, I worked at Etikane, a consulting firm, so I had a similar in the past, and we are doing the very similar web service of mental health in the area. So we provide self-care assessment and digital content and cognitive behavioral therapy online session. But we are, we are finding very difficult hurdles to create business models, actually. So I want to ask you how to develop your business model in your country. Is it, or does employer pay for it, or healthcare system will cover for it? I want to ask about it.
Yeah, no, very, very good question. So indeed, it's a new business model, let's say, right? Because we position right now KN Health outside of the health system per se, purely in the prevention space. And we realized that employers have really an interest, even more than a responsibility, for their people to stay well and really sustainably manage peak performance. So this way, KN Health works a little bit like an insurance. Our corporate clients pay us a low fee per employee per month in order for them to have access to our full suite of services, from self-assessments, self-care programs, and a number of coaching and counseling sessions with our providers. And then we we try to engage on standard at least 30% of their people with these tools. Yeah. Now, what usually happens is our clients start off with a limited part of their organization to try and see how effective Kian is. Then they realize that we're 10, 15 times more effective than, let's say, a traditional employee assistance program, and then they scale up to the other parts of the organization. But typically is the corporate partner would pay a license fee per employee per month to access our services.
Thank you. Do you see any, do you see any variety in terms of the adoption based on the national culture? Has Swiss been very receptive to your service and the other parts of the Europe, or tell us? Because I think Hazama-san is struggling a little bit with the Japanese adoption rate of his services.
Yes, thank you for that question. So of course we do see variations in engagement rates across the world. But funnily enough, Switzerland is not at the top. It's actually comparable to what we see in Japan. I'm sorry to say that because I'm Swiss and I would love to say we see the highest engagement in Switzerland. But we do see higher engagement rates in countries where the stigma around mental health and well-being is already reduced. Typically in the US and the UK, we see the highest engagement rates. Then there's maybe a middle tier and around most European countries and Japan actually. And then there's a few countries that have quite low engagement rate, and we really need to figure out a way to get people to be more engaged with this topic.
I think that is, I think that's fascinating. The cultural difference is very much tied to this perception or stigma. And the more we talk about it like this, the more we reduce that. And I think it's such an important conversation. I think on that, I think it's a perfect time actually to transition and hear from one of our Japanese panelists, and then we can continue these questions and the open conversation between the three panelists about, what works, what doesn't work in the role of technology. So I'll pass it to you, Naoshi.
Well, thank you very much, Alison. It's a great segue, I think, to introduce Hazama-san. So a couple of questions. Let me start with the first one, which is how does AI or how does technology improve the quality of assessment and monitoring, to start with?
Okay, I think the key point is to quantify and visualize their conditions. That's the first step to increase the quality of monitoring and evaluation. So we might have to start from questionnaire, just a questionnaire. We can use wearable devices, as Yang-san is doing, or we can use other AI technology like image recognition, voice recognition, text analysis. We call it digital biomarkers. So we can
digital biomarkers.
Digital biomarkers.
Okay.
So it's one of the trends in the world in healthcare area. So we can quantify, visualize the analog information or human behaviors by using, for example, smartphone log analysis or voice recognition or facial image analysis to quantify the correlation between our activities and mental conditions. That's one of the trends. So if we can realize such technologies, we implement the technology in a very natural way in our life. Because if we have to answer some questions, we need to move, we take action, which is bothersome for individual consumers. But if we can implement such digital micro technologies, we can just lead the life in a normal way. But our behavior is digitized and quantified. So that's the first step to increase the level of evaluation and monitoring.
Excellent. So the next step would be to give care to those people who have some challenges. And what do you do in that field?
So now we are, as Blackstone is doing, we are matching the individuals and employees and licensed therapists, cognitive behavioral therapy licensed therapists. That's what we're doing. And so we can utilize the data we gather to optimize the matching between them. So I think there's huge room for licensed therapists and counselors in Japan to play a more active role in Japan, because their opportunities are very limited for now, just at school or academic institutions. Mm-hmm. So as well-being trends continue, I think there will be more opportunities for them to play an active role in Japan. So we call a bipolarized model in Japan. It's a bathtub model we call, which means when people have depressed, or if it's very serious, they go to doctor, psychomatic medical care. But if they feel depressed, but it's not so serious, they go to a fortune teller or entertainment, spiritual entertainment. So we call it bathtub model. But there's a huge market in fortune teller in Japan, actually. So we lack of intermediate market, actually. So as Vlad-san mentioned, so we need to create prevention care market in the well-being field. So if we can realize it, I think therapists and counselors can play a more active role in that field.
Excellent. I have a question or two more to ask, and then I open the floor for Alison and Vlad and Dr. Yano to ask questions. But in our earlier discussions, you said that you're still, like facing some challenges in ensuring that the organization would really commit to a service like yours. What are the barriers?
Yeah, that's a monetization model. Take, for example, for HR department, it's quite difficult for solution providers like us to show the quantitative outcomes and implications for employers so much that they can continuously pay for a premium service. That's her first hurdle. And the second one is basically HR department is conservative in general. So to pay for premium service or to invest in human capital. So that's a hurdle. So they just introduce some services that match for statutory obligation, like industrial physician or stress check assessment defined by Ministry of Health in Japan. So that's the monetization is a hurdle, but this is the other side of the benefits that we enjoy through Japanese sophisticated social insurance system, actually. So social insurance system is quite sophisticated, so employees don't have to pay attention to the insurance coverage or mental health care service.
Excellent. So in the ideal world, what would be the ideal environment where people can or organization can really make the benefit of your services to improve the quality of life of many people? What are what do we have to do?
That's a difficult question. I see two trends. One is ESG investment.
ESG investment, okay.
Human capital disclosure. That's one of the huge trends in the world. So ESG investment and some activities around ISO 30414, some standardization program of human capital disclosure. That is putting pressure on corporate management for now to invest in human capital or human resources. So now employees are not human resources, human capital that we need to maintain and increase the value continuously. So I think this trend can change the mindset of management in Japan and the world. I think that's one of the trends. And in terms of monetization model, I guess we need to involve more stakeholders, not only HR department and employers, but for example, private insurers or some product and service providers that want to contribute to employees' health. So we might be able to create new service model with insurance companies, for example, to provide not only financial insurance products, but at the same time healthcare service in bundle. So that kind of new monetization model based on Japanese social insurance system should be important.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So let us open the floor for comments and questions from the Swiss friends. Alison?
Thank you. I find it fascinating, and I think I'll direct a question both to Mr. Hazama and Vlad, and so maybe Vlad, you can start and pass it. But my question is, there's also a trend for people to be very concerned about their privacy, right? And we see in for example, in Europe, we see GDPR regulation being very, very strict. And you see a little bit of backlash with social media and people leaving where they don't want their data to be accessed by their organization in particular. Do you see any backlash, or how do you manage that risk with the data that you're collecting, which is very personal to people?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start with the first answer, and then I would be really excited to hear about how that plays in an environment where we use AI to interpret data. So we've made an explicit decision up front to not do passive tracking because it still has the potential of really scaring people, right? But when they get an interpretation of their mental health state of mind without actually submitting actively that data to the organization or to us as a third party. So the way we go around this is, first of all, there's this concept of explicit consent, which is required as part of GDPR. So whenever somebody creates an account with Key and Health, they have to check a box that says, I consent to the data being managed for health reasons. Then secondly, we invest a lot of time and effort in communicating upfront that all of their data is anonymized and aggregated and never accessible at an individual level to their employer, such that as an individual working in a large organization, you don't have a risk of being identified or singled out by the organization itself for dealing with a mental health challenge. And that takes time to build because it's about really building trust. And we really invest a lot in communicating and making sure that people feel comfortable using our service without running the risk of being singled out.
That's interesting. And Mr. Hazam, I'd love,
They're very similar. So we need to implement consent function in the product. And at the same time, we are investing in communication with employers or clients and stakeholders. The 2 points for us as well. And at the same time, we need to create processes and system at our company to create a governance model at our company to how to utilize personal information in a company. And at the same time, we need to develop culture to pay attention to personal identifiable information at the company, because we need to increase the literacy at the company and our employee as well.
Fascinating. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Simple question. Can your technology make people happier?
Yeah,
actually, about 10 years ago, I and Professor Sonia Lyubomirsky co-authored a paper, just the name, Can Technology Make You Happier? On IEEE spectrum. And so I've been working for that. And I'm quite confident that every user needs to be happy to make this real.
Yeah, I believe so. And we have done just dozens of experimental projects with companies, and we heard some user voices about how they changed their status, or they're very satisfied with our service in such projects. So with those very limited for now, but I want to expand the opportunities for more broader sense.
One question. I think this issue of passive assessment pretty fascinating, because passive assessment can give you a lot of information, I think. At the same time, it breaches the privacy issues. How do you deal with that?
So that's a very difficult issue, actually. So there should be some processes to get consent from the users in the first place, because it's a backlash of GAFA model, digital platform model. So yeah, I think we need to solve it, but currently we are just we do our R&D projects, technology. So to implement the outputs of R&D, we need to think about ethical aspects and the personal information aspect as well. That should be the heart.
That's right. So technological advancement is one thing, but also societal framework and regulations and privacy. There are many items in play.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. And okay, let us now move to Dr. Yano, if I may. Right. So Dr. Yano, or Yano-san, what is Factor X? Is Factor X of a happy and productive organization? We are so intrigued by it.
Thank you for asking me. And actually, I've been working to make such a happy and productive organization in the last 18 years. And especially, I understood when I finished work, actually, I was working on semiconductor R&D in Hitachi about 20 years. And unfortunately, Hitachi decided to quit that business. That's why I need to start something new. And But that was quite fortunate because I studied earlier than the rest of the world on this topic, especially based on data. And we have collected a lot of data in the last 18 years by using wearable sensors like back-based or this one. Actually, I've been wearing this for about more than 16 years, 24 hours for full 7 days a week. So anyway, we have collected a lot of data from quite wide variety of organizations and occupations, more than 10 million days, more than 100,000 people. We have collected all those data and analyzed and for more than 10 years and find a very big factor which divides, which separate from happy and unhappy organization. That is related to communication.
Right.
And actually, if one talk to two people, but they don't talk each other, you will in a V-shaped structure.
Mm-hmm.
If they talk each other, you are in a triangular structure. This social network structure is a very universal metric, whether this person gets depressed or happy.
I see. So V-shaped versus triangle shape. Right.
V-shape, for example, if one is enrolled, we are engaged in a new project, he needs to talk to a leader, but he also needs to talk to the original boss.
Right.
Then they don't talk each other.
Right.
The one might be depressed.
I see. So for example, Dr. Yano, you are the person.
Yeah.
And you have one boss who is Mr. Hazama and another one me.
Right.
Right.
But
and
you don't.
But we don't like each other. We don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And then you are in trouble.
Yeah, I'm in trouble. Or very different example, I talk to my wife.
Yeah.
And she talked to my daughter.
Yeah.
But I don't directly talk to my daughter. Then, we will have a V-shaped structure in my family.
So factor X is not universally applicable, but applicable to business and also.
Yes, family. So this is quite ubiquitous. And, so this V-shaped structure represents division between two worlds, actually, and this one is in between. Triangle structure is a very basic marker or element of the community formation. So even in a work setting or task-related relationship, we need to form a community, human-to-human relationship. As a primate, they do grooming to check one is not enemy. We are colleagues in a tribe. That circuit is quite live in our bodies right now. So even in task-related, workplace or work setting or work team, we need to form a triangle relationship.
So this factor X is actually go beyond species.
Right.
That's fascinating. So the second question is that, okay, now that you have found out the factor X, you can assess that factor X in one way or the other. And provided you could do that, how would you support the organization to improve?
So this factor X related to engagement of employees or, retention or mental health or onboarding of a newcomer. All these are quite related to this triangle relationship. And we have developed and actually providing a service to create or overcome the V-shaped structure and create triangle relationship by our app. How? Simply create triangle relationship in an organization or team of people, group of people. But the difficulty is how to connect two people who don't have a concrete instrumental or task-related requirement. And we put attention something that is quite common in sports, but not so common, popular in business.
Okay.
Both have much in common. We, compete, winner is praised, and efforts, teamwork, important, sports business, the same. But this factor is quite, popular in sports, but not in business. That is cheering up you.
Okay.
So cheering up people or person make you more vitalized, energized,
I see.
both sides.
Okay.
And you can do this even though you don't have a task-related, opportunity or relationship. But the problem is, in a baseball team, you can find he's doing hitting, so we can, cheer up,
Right.
hit,
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, go for home run.
Yeah, home run, something like that. But in a work setting, we don't see that. Everybody's, something on a PC or so this app supports, app provides a kind of a cue or kind of an issue or question, asks something, quite wide variety of positive aspect of the person in a morning and a question. And, writing something without nothing is quite difficult.
Right.
But the employee or the user asks the system's question, answers the system's question, some 30, 40 letters, quite short. But that's quite eloquent for all others, and boss or colleagues will cheer up the person. That relationship is on a app. And also the app assigns actually triangular team of cheering up team Monday, every Monday. And considering the records of such a cheering up relationship, looking for the V-shaped structure and form assignment of 3 people triangular team of mutually cheering up team, and they cheer each other for 1 week, and the next Monday the system assigns another triangle relationship based on to overcome the V-shaped structure. In that way, quite automatically and quite low limited time, the team is full of quite rich triangle relationship and social network without task-related requirement.
Okay, our friends from Switzerland looking very, very intrigued. Alison, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's fascinating because it connects to that theme of technology enabling human interaction again, and really that role of that. Before I ask some questions, Vlad, do you have any reflections on this, or questions or ideas that have come up based on hearing about this innovative technology?
No question, actually, just a reaction, because we've looked a lot into the science of gratitude, right? And it turns out that gratitude is really effective when directed outwards, right, to someone else. So I think that the power of the triangle structure that you just evoked is really there, and really also backed by science. So I'm very curious to see how this is working within organizations and how people use it over time. I think that would be my question, if you do have time to answer it.
Yeah, you may, the app actually puts a lot of quite small functions like point and level, kind of gamification, let them enjoy using, or even a kind of giving point to others to cheer up. and when they don't have time to send a cheering message. And so in that way, and digital support, the kind of quite variety of ways to connect those people. And is that answering your question?
It does. But it's just specifically, I would be interested in seeing how retention evolves over time. You know, does it stay stable? Do people sort of tend to churn after a while? Or does it have such a powerful effect that employees recommend to other employees to join your app, and therefore it becomes this sort of virtuous circle within the company?
So actually, of course, that depends. And we actually support how they actually, the app is kind of a question, as I mentioned, and the theme is every 2 weeks is changed, so they do not,
Get bored. Yes.
get bored. And so basically, it is such a good relationship is quite, sustained right now. And but of course, not 100%, especially some difficult situation is we don't know, but for example, the team is already very tightly good team. They don't need additional, tools. That's one aspect, but some variety of reason. But I'm quite happy to see that very many users, when we have some workshop or feedback sessions, sometimes I directly say that our team and I get happier after using this app.
So gratitude goes to you, and that makes you happy. Great. Hazama-san, do you have any remarks?
Yeah, I'm very fascinated as well. So could you let us a little bit more about the future service, the aspiration? What's your aspiration of this service in future?
Yes, this triangular relationship is not only useful for organization, but actually we have good communication with some of the areas or cities, government, because they also want to have good relationship in their citizens. And this triangular relationship, even when they don't have a task-related need requirement, that's the essence of humankind. So our mechanism and app, I'm quite confident that will help those people in ordinary citizens, and that's the next step.
I think this relates to social determinants of health. I think community relationship is very important for the elderly as well, in terms of dementia prevention or dementia care. So I think this technology can be implemented in society or local municipality as well.
Excellent. Alison, time to kind of wrap up this first discussion, which I think has been fascinating. We moved from technology to the basic nature of humankind. Would you like to, share with us takeaways?
Sure. Just as we're wrapping up, I've been taking notes, as you can see, to say what are some of the key learnings, insights, and takeaways we can think of from exploring 3 different technologies and 3 different approaches to supporting mental health and vitality in organizations and now beyond. I think one of the main things I'm taking away is, first of all, that technology can really support and build a bridge to vitality and well-being, if it is intentionally the goal to make people happier, more productive, and to thrive at work. So that should be the goal of technology in support of mental health. And in particular, we learned through our speakers that What it can support in is the awareness that there could be a potential problem, the pre-awareness, the diagnostics of what, and which helps people become aware through diagnostic, and that can be passive diagnostics or active diagnostics. It can provide advice. It can provide advice of what you might do, how you might think about it, with some activities, and it can connect you to actual humans in the real world. So you can use technology to support not only connection to coaches and therapists, but also connections to your colleagues through, you know, making the triangle structures. How do we seek to build our networks of humans in the real world, and how can technology help that? And finally, I think technology comes with inherent risks that are, you know, people are becoming more and more aware of, risks of overuse, risks of privacy and data concerns. But in order to make technology work for health and vitality, it's about being very aware of those risks and being active and intentional about managing them, both at the technology provider and developer level, but also as humans and users and organizations, of how we manage and mitigate and mitigate those risks so we can get the most from technology, so it can support our well-being. So those are the key takeaways for me from this panel. And I think we could have spoken for the next 2 hours about this. There's so many more questions we have. But I'll pass it to you, Naoshi, to say your final words and to thank the speakers. And then we will close off. And with everybody who's listening, knowing that you can access more information about the speakers through their websites and through materials.
Yes, thank you very much, Alison, for an excellent summary. And you know, Ellen, who will be joining us for the next panel, also, you know, commented that you know, human touch being essential and technology can help. So I think we have a very good understanding of the you know, opportunities and challenges. So let me conclude here by thanking all the speakers, but also, you know, like this Switzerland-Japan Economic Forum is just not an event. It is just a start of the conversation. And as Alison said, we have had a fantastic, you know, interaction today. And I hope that these speakers, of course, you know, the audience online and the, you know, physically here, could continue to discuss for the betterment of our lives, right? Thank you very much. And we have to conclude our first panel and then take a few minutes of pause and then go to the next. Right? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, let me just thank you also, our speakers, Alison and Naoshi, for this first panel. Very much appreciated. As we just heard, we now take a very short break, about 3 minutes, to rearrange also our stage here for the second panel. We do want to build up on this second panel, so don't go anywhere. We will be back in 3 minutes. Thank you. Dear guests here at the Swiss residence in Tokyo, and dear guests online, welcome back after our short break. As you can see, we have rearranged our stage here, and we are ready to start with the panel 2 and really address the core question of what all our organizations, what each one of us can do to support employee vitality. Let me hand over back to Alison in Lausanne, and now she here in the residence to moderate the second panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for another kind of introduction. And Alison, would you like to start with framing or positioning this second panel, please?
All right. Thank you, Naoshi. Thank you. Yes, welcome back, everyone. We're excited to be here with a new panel and a new topic, diving even deeper into the question of how do we boost workplace health and vitality for humans and for workplaces overall. So for this panel, we're going to dive into what you can actually do, what organizations might be able to do, and what individuals can do within them. So I will pass it to you, Naoshi, to introduce our first panelist, and then I will introduce the second two.
はい、それでは山本絹子さんをご紹介します。山本さんは日本語でお話をされます。
Okay, I will introduce Yamamoto-san. Okay, she will be speaking in Japanese. She's the vice president of Pastor Group in 1979, She joined Pasana, who is involved in the human resources, and he has been very active in this area. In 1995, there was a big turning point for both Pasana and Yamauchi-san. You probably remember, people in Japan, there was a Hanshin Awaji, big earthquake, major earthquake. This earthquake hit the epicenter was in Awajishima and hit Hyogo Prefecture and Kobe as well. So Pasana was focused on sending people to organizations, and by building departments and commercial facilities, they decided to go into the space of building those new workplaces, and they collaborated with municipalities and local governments. And she is involved now in the work of regional revitalization in Wajishima. She is now working on cultural programs and also tourist facilities, as well as the agriculture programs. And they have decided to relocate the headquarters office in Wajishima, working on the well-being and vitality of the community as well as the employees and trying to create a synergetic effect. I think we can probably listen to a very interesting story about what we can think of in terms of well-being. Alison, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't wait to hear that story. It sounds fascinating. So let me introduce you to Ellen first. Ellen is an economist and certified workplace wellness consultant, both in Switzerland and in the United States. She has a master's degree in workplace wellness and coaching and is an ICF professional coach, board certified health and wellness coach. Ellen is here to talk to us today about Friendly Workspace Switzerland. This is a fascinating initiative from Health Promotion Switzerland, which focuses on changing the workplace and work lives and conditions of people for the better. So Friendly Workspace sets a Swiss quality standard through a workplace certification program and support to implement workplace health management in organizations. Friendly Workspace is a government-funded label that is based on 25 different criteria, from strategy through to behaviors that concern workplace healthy practices. Almost 100 organizations have received this distinction in Switzerland so far, which is fascinating. So Ellen's going to talk to us today about what the Swiss government's looking for and how they're promoting workplace well-being and vitality. Thank you for being here, Ellen. And next we have Yassine. Oh, thank you, Yassine Zaid. Yeah, Yassine comes to us today here as Chief Strategy Officer at NextThink, where he's responsible for developing new partnerships, alliances with strategic technology and hardware vendors. Yassine also plays a pivotal role in driving the company's product innovation and the go-to market stages. We're also, I must say, proud that Yassine holds an MBA from IMD in Switzerland here. So NextThink, for those of you who don't know NextThink, is a Swiss unicorn. We're all very proud of this organization that was recently valued at over 1 billion. They're a world leader in digital employee experience, so that connection with technology is very, very clear as well. And as you can imagine, the rise in workplace remote working has dramatically accelerated since in the wake of the COVID. And as a digital employee experience forms a massive part of all of the interactions that employees have with their company and with each other. So NextThink even has a software that can help support the prediction and trends of well-being over time in organizations. So we're excited to hear about Yassine's experience in workplace well-being at both the technology and the organizational level. So thank you for being here, Yassine. And I will pass it over to you now, Naoshi, to kick off the panels.
ありがとうございます。今日は本当に3人のですね、また新しく、そして素晴らしいスピーカーと。
Thank you very much. We have wonderful speakers, and I'm looking forward to having a very meaningful discussion first. Ms. Yamamoto, I have several questions to you. Earlier, we talked about activation or vitalization of local community and vitalization of company employees. Now, to start with, the company decided to move its headquarters to Awajishima, the island, and now the company is gaining a lot of focus. Now you're moving the headquarters from Tokyo to Awaji City. What are the reasons behind the decision? After the earthquake, after disaster, BCP plan needs to be considered by all companies, but in case of crisis, what should be the best place to move the headquarter function? That was an important topic, and that was the first point we considered. Also, within Japan, we wanted to deal with the issue of disparities among different communities. In Tokyo, people concentrate, the population is large in Tokyo, and as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of stress of work, of family, it all concentrated in Tokyo metropolitan area. Now, when you think of these situations, we wanted to have a good way of living, the thriving experiences. We wanted to find a place where that can be realized. And considering the business continuity plan, we thought by transferring to Awaji and having our employees live in Awaji, we thought that people will be able to have different ways of life, happier ways of life. And we thought such life could be created by our company employees together on Awaji Island. Now we were to move to a local community from the metropolitan area. Now, people have little employment in local areas because there's lack of industry. Our company wants to create job opportunities. And in order to create job opportunities, we could utilize tourism and agriculture and other opportunities, but that's not enough. That is why people are moving from rural areas to urban areas. And we wanted to create a new industry in Awaji Island where people can have hopes and dreams. Those are the reasons why we moved to Awaji Island. Now, WHO has a definition of health, and you thought about it very strongly, I heard. Right, the well-being definition by WHO, what they have in mind is the physical health and mental health, and another aspect is the social health. And as was mentioned earlier, it all comes down to people being able to live and work and develop human relationships. They want to be recognized, respected, and loved. Those relationships, when those relationships cannot be built, health is compromised. And that will have impact on physical health as well as mental health. So through work, we wanted the society, women, people to be able to have work, but all times we want people to work as they make sure that they have good mental relationships with people. So you have good relationships and be able to thrive in work. That's what we wanted to achieve as a fundamental requirements. So we wanted to create good lives for our employees, having those elements. Now, I'd like to share with you a slide, and this represents what you are doing, everything that you're doing. In the middle, you have physical being, social well-being, and mental well-being. These are the three definitions of well-being by WHO. And there are 6 elements surrounding this, right? Food is one element. In Awaji Island, good number of excellent food products can be offered. It's abundant in nature. So we started with agriculture to have agricultural products and opportunities to eat those foods safely. That's one aspect of health. Now, the next aspect is health, and this is also related to art. We want people to open their minds, and not just with nature, but with music, art, and interactions. Interactions make people healthy. So towards art and health, we wanted to build various facilities and opportunities. Entertainment, relaxation, and learning are three other categories, and each one of them will make people energetic, and the related facilities and events have been offered by us. You find all these wonderful illustrations, and they all represent facilities that we have created. People from outside of the island come to Awaji, and when people visit Awaji Island, they become energized. They feel refreshed. That's what we wanted to achieve by creating all these facilities. Thank you very much. Our Swiss friends must have various questions and comments about your presentation, but I have one last question before moving on to you. Your employees moved to Awaji Island, and as a result, well-being and vitalities of your employees have increased. Well, not all the functions have moved because the salespeople are still in Osaka and Tokyo, but the business planning and the other backyard people have moved to Awaji Island. What made the biggest difference? People can live in the way you can never do so in Tokyo. In Tokyo, you have to live in a tiny house, but now the size of the house is twice, 3 times larger, and they can commute by vehicles driving, 10-minute driving to commute to work, and their family members will have time to do what they want. Our employees will have time to do what they want to do. Employees understand that very well. On the other hand, they are aware that this whole effort is a big, huge trial, experiment, a prototype. So the employees want to make it a success. They are really willing to make this effort a success, and that's driving us to move ahead. Thank you very much. So in a way, this is a huge social experimentation, right? Alison, any questions or comments?
Yes, this is fascinating. It is rethinking the role of organization in community development and at the even the family level. So I think, thank you for this interesting presentation. I would like to offer Ellen and Yassine the opportunity to ask any questions or provide a reflection on what you've heard and whether you think from your perspective in Switzerland, this could also be something interesting.
I would love to chime in here, Alison. Thank you very much. And thank you. I was fascinated by what you just told us. And I actually, Alison, this reminded me of North America back in the years when we were creating towns like in Detroit, where they would have everybody living close, working close, creating this community. I work a lot with the older generations as well. Community is the #1 factor to aging well. So I love, love, love this idea. The only thing that I would say is in Switzerland, we're almost already there, just because it's such a tiny country that even if I go to the very furthest corner, I'm only driving or taking a train for 3 hours. So in a way, what I'm wondering, reflection for everybody, we are one of the countries that's like Japan. We have one of the most aging population and one of the happiest populations. And I'm wondering if maybe it's not because of that, because these various dimensions of holistic well-being defined by the WHO are already being exploited almost automatically. So fascinating, fascinating.
And Yassine, any questions or comments on that?
Frankly, just a comment, and I can relate to all what have been said because, and I'm fascinated by the experience and what Ellen said. I lived in Paris, I lived in London, and when I arrived to Switzerland, I fell in love with Switzerland for the same reason, which is I can live in the countryside in a large house, as well as it was said, and actually 12 minutes, literally 12 minutes from the center of Lausanne, a very cosmopolitan city where jobs are interesting, and that balance between being able to have, fulfilling, job experience in a cosmopolitan place, but also being able to commute easily and live in the countryside is, a treasure. And really, I think that's, and I join what Ellen said, maybe that's why in Switzerland, people are, the index of happiness is high, because that combination between the fulfillment socially, professionally, and a simple, healthy, easy life, that's a treasure. And I can relate to that. And I'm fascinated by the experience, because in Switzerland, it is by design. So we just enjoy it. But seeing the courage and really bravery of a company to start that and do that, it's really impressive and fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, for us, the lives of our employees may be being tested, but we have another important responsibility. Compared to the metropolitan area, we wanted the local area, communities to be vitalized, and they have lack of business before, but by us developing all these facilities, we are hoping to be able to create new businesses in local areas. Like you have apps for experiments, but in Awaji Island, various health-related startup companies, we are trying to invite them to Awaji so that new health industry can be developed in this area. That's what we are trying to do. And our employees themselves are moving away from a human resource company to solution-oriented company. That's what people are trying to do. Well, Japan may be larger than Switzerland, but considering the sustainability of Japan, which way do we go? Do we go for urbanization, or do we want to vitalize the local areas? Of course, there are pros and cons in each. Creation of meaningful job opportunities and industries are quite important, and the company Persona has been doing that. It's quite encouraging for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would love to move on to our next panelist, and again offer opportunities for both panelists to speak. But I think what is interesting about we're moving from the role of building in the community, and that health and vitality is really everyone's responsibility, including the government. And that's a question. And so Ellen works closely with Health Promotion Switzerland. Ellen, I would love to hear, what is Switzerland's approach to managing health and vitality in the workplace, and how are they bringing that to life?
With pleasure, Allison. You laid this out actually quite well, and it was mentioned as well by the Swiss ambassador. Swiss Health Promotion is a foundation which is funded by the Swiss government, and interesting, this was not mentioned, and insurance companies. And that's something that came up earlier today. People were talking about involving more stakeholders, bringing in more insurance companies. So that's who we are funded by. We are under a government mandate. We initiate, we coordinate, and evaluate measures aimed at promoting health. Now, they promote health in many areas: schools, adolescents, refugees, the elderly, and the workplace. So we are looking specifically at the workplace. We are accountable to the Swiss government. So personally, I am one of the people in Switzerland who is an assessor and a consultant. And I'd just like to do a little bit of a deep dive on that. Swiss Health Promotion trains people like me all over the country. And what's interesting with this model is we are trained to both consult and assess. I'll get back to that in a moment, but before I do, I think it's also interesting to understand that the model, I am an external consultant. But for example, some of the large corporations train people in the company. So Swiss organizations have two choices. They can either hire an external consultant to come in and look at these criteria and consult in-house continuously, or they can hire an outside consultant. You can certainly all imagine the advantages and disadvantages of both of those. So what we are trained in, and that's very interesting, and Allison, I would be delighted to make available all of these resources because they're all free of charge. This is available in 4 languages, free of charge for everyone. we have broken down the workplace criteria into 25 criteria. And as a consultant, to explain the difference between a consultant and an assessor, we want to understand the criteria and we want to be able to assess ourselves. Simply scale from 1 to 5. 5 is amazing. 1 is I'm thinking about it. And in the middle, the average is I'm doing something. I'm actually active in that area. So we've got this.
Alan, what are these? What are the most important criteria here?
So let me tell you. Good question. Good question. So the first criteria is, do you have a workplace health management strategy? We start at the top. Is there a strategy? That's number 1. Clearly, afterward, is it communicated? Is it written down? Is it understood? Is it applied? Is it updated? And is it real? Because it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to actually implement it. We talk about strategy. We talk about personnel management and work organization. We talk about workplace health planning, corporate social responsibility, all the way down to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that's belonging. And as we all know, belonging has a direct link with well-being, and even implementing and evaluating, Allison, because again, and this brings us to that other training, we talked about consulting, but assessing, we have assessors like myself, and we have a label. So think of this label called Friendly Workspace as an Olympic gold medal. And I like to think of Swiss health promotion. The word is promotion. We don't all need to have a gold medal at the Olympics to be healthy, to be well-rounded, but we all want to be progressing. We all want to be moving. We all want to be exercising. So we've got these 2 levels. We've got this level of getting the gold standard, which is phenomenal. Over 200,000 employees in Switzerland and 100 organizations have that label, very prestigious label. I'm an assessor. By the way, the assessment, the label, it means you've got an average of 3 on all of the 25 criteria you've assessed. Okay, and the tool, you can actually test this online. You can play with it and you can try it totally free of charge, made available to all Swiss companies, all Swiss people, free of charge.
So that's really interesting. So the government is actually doing this research and training people throughout the whole country, within and outside of organizations, to be able to understand what it means to have a healthy workspace and be able to assess whether you do. So that gets to that metrics level of knowing, and therefore you also can know when you're making a difference. And before I ask, I have so many questions I could ask, but before I do, I want to see if I have any reflections from my colleagues in Tokyo and from Yassine in a minute, to see if you have any thoughts about this or questions.
どうぞ。
日本からよろしいですか？
もちろんです。はい。
日本
In the case of Japan, when it comes to diversity, we set goals or maybe actions, but whether it's complied, it's very difficult to assess, or maybe not assessed properly, or if it is assessed. People have to feel there's some kind of benefits like ESG award, or they don't really understand the necessity of it. Doesn't really permeate. But I was wondering if what is the case or situation in Switzerland.
I would be more than happy to actually pitch in on that, because one of the things, and it also came up earlier in the discussions in the first panel, one of the things that we find critical when we come in and we do a first assessment and a checkup is to involve people from every level of the organization. We'll be in a room with maybe 8 or 9 people representing all of the levels of the organization, because it's like buying a gift. To get it right, we really need to understand the people we're giving the gift to. So we like to bring people in from multiple areas in the organization, so we have input. And the second thing I would add to that, it's not enough just to input, we need to follow up. 6 months later, open the conversation. The advantage of having a structure is that we create a common language so that everybody is speaking in terms of the same language, and that what you just said, which is misunderstanding or not understanding, it can't happen because they were involved from the beginning. And I think it's new in a culture like Switzerland, where people are maybe less outgoing, and it may be very similar in Japan. People are less willing to break those barriers, but today it is an absolute necessity.
Interesting. And Yassine, do you have any comments or thoughts on this? Questions?
I have a question actually to Ellen, because it's quite interesting, and as an executive in a company that is where you know we are under challenges every single day, high growth, and tech companies. So, and I wanted to ask Ellen, do you see differences between industries in Switzerland that are maybe subject more or need more your intervention? Do you see a correlation between the size of the organization? I'm interested because, again, we are a company where we are growing extremely fast, where the environment is challenging, but we approach it maybe much more directly us as executives to lead those kind of things. So I wonder whether you have a correlation related to the size of companies or to certain industries.
It's an excellent question. And Swiss Health Promotion, I have to say, one of the things that they do is they're continuously updating. So as I explained earlier, we have both consultants and assessors. A very, very small startup company with 5 people probably doesn't want to get the Olympic medal.
Yeah.
But to actually use that structure to march forward, it gives everybody a common framework. So I definitely see the need in all sizes of organizations. I work a lot multinationally. I work a lot abroad as well. And it is true. And this came up as well in the earlier panel, so I'll make the link with that. North America is further advanced in terms of having structures for workplace well-being. There is a reason for that. It is because, in principle, the companies cover the health insurance costs of the individuals, and it's in their direct interest. In Switzerland, is not usually the case. The employer is not paying for health insurance. So it's taken longer for them to understand Allison's return on investment for 4 to 1, which is actually statistically true today. Swiss Health Promotion is advancing. We have a new tech product coming out next year for very small companies to be able to do this whole self-assessment. We're super excited about it, to do this whole self-assessment and drive through the change. What we don't want, and this we're seeing a lot of and more since COVID, are what we call random acts of wellness. They're little bits of, okay, we do a little something for our people and then we're happy for a year, but maybe we're not getting it right. We want something that is coherent, that is solid, where everybody is involved from the beginning, that we can roll out forever.
Interesting. Thank you. That's fascinating. Thank you very much. And I think we're moving to different levels of analysis, from the company's role in the community and giving people a sense of purpose, to what the government says around structures and processes. And now I'd like to move on to speaking to you, Yassine, about your role as a leader, as a senior executive leader within a highly successful, fast-growing company. Like you said, you're dealing with the mental health and wellness and vitality of your employees on a day-to-day basis. And you're a big proponent of flexible work. I would love to hear about how you think flexible work and workplace practices affect employee well-being, and what are some of the risks, and what are you seeing in your role at NextThink?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison, and thank you for the invitation and the introduction. And as you said, NextThink has been a fantastic, journey, fantastic, adventure. And it has been challenging when you are in a company that grows every year by 70%, where you double the size of the people of the organization every single year. And you know that the culture change, you know, very quickly we are very diverse to really, you know, cope with that and stay focused and go forward. And half of the company are you know, engineers, maybe some of the smartest engineers in the world, coming from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and it's fascinating how much that part of the organization, you know, they are really very eager, you know, about well-being, and because there are people who put on themselves a lot of pressure to be perfect, to actually you know, deliver the best product ever. And we love that at Nextlink, because that's in our DNA, which is we're going to do something that is unbelievably good and that's going to change something in the world. And that can put a pressure on people and can, you know, make them, you know, suffer from lack of well-being. But I think what we managed to do is, if I say always, you know, stay, you know, make the purpose clear and have a clear purpose. And I personally believe that it has been extremely successful, because when there is a purpose and people wake up in the morning to really go and drive that purpose, and if we are capable to give them a sense of fulfillment every single day, almost every single hour on small projects, and they see, you know, in my opinion, when you have that combination, you can cope, you know, proactively to deliver well-being. Of course, we have many other initiatives because it's not enough, but I think that foundation participates a lot in coping with what can be the disadvantage of being in a very, you know, growing company that is, you know, trying to achieve a dream and whatever.
That's
When
interesting.
yeah.
Go ahead. I said, you mentioned the word proactive. And I
Yeah.
think in our earlier discussions, I think this is fascinating because you work digitally, virtually, and in fact, your software is really about digital employee experience.
Yes.
Are you able to predict, you know, and track and monitor what's happening with employee well-being and satisfaction through this digital workplace that you have?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what is important for us and what we try to do from the start is actually to, you know, say to every organization that understanding how technology works is not enough. The most important thing is to understand how people are actually interacting with the digital environment. And given that today we live all in the software, it is 90% of our life. It doesn't matter that the technology is perfect if people are suffering from it, if people are not able to do their job. And if people do not feel they do not their job, there is no sense of fulfillment. They don't feel participating in the mission. And that's for us the first reason of people, you know, get depressed or get, you know, not happy or whatever. So for us from the start was, you really need to understand how every single employee is interacting with the technology and make him feel that he's doing his job and not put a hurdle to his job. And as you said, when came hybrid work, our mission became even more obvious because suddenly the workplace, the physical workplace, moved entirely inside the digital workplace, and it becomes digital experience became the most important thing in employee experience. And I love hearing about the experience in Japan, because that's why as well I'm big, you know, proponent, as you said, of flexibility, because actually we can do the same by leaving to people flexibility from where they work. So they can work from an island, they can work from remote areas, as long as the digital workplace is giving them the opportunity to be happy, they can do it. How we do with our software to understand people, we noticed that all the service that we do in corporations to understand people are great, but actually they have a rate of response of only 5%, and they are out of context. You sent me a survey this morning asking me about something that happened 2 weeks ago. I don't answer to it, and it's out of context. What we try to do is to have the possibility to engage with employees, to sense their level of satisfaction or frustration or connection, but in the context. And we believe that empathy is understanding the context of people. So I know, if we know what is happening to you, how you are interacting with others, are you doing your job, are you able to work, and we know it through our software. So if we add on top of that the possibility to sense your frustration, your satisfaction, your happiness, and we can analyze it in the context, we are capable to very quickly sense which part of the organization is having issues, or which part of the organization or a single employee may go into, you know, a stage where he's not satisfied. And that's how all the large corporations that are using our software are using our technology to be able to actually, you know, do that, engage with their employees, make them feel that they are understood. Because what is important when we do a survey or we sense is actually to act on it. If you don't act on it, you even make the problem even harder. And that's what we are driving with our software.
And that really ties in with what Ellen was saying around measurement and then taking from measurement to action. And so, Naoshi, I'll pass it to you, to our colleagues in Japan. Do you have any insights or questions?
As you have rightly pointed out, without technology, there may be a geographical gap between Tokyo and elsewhere, be it in Japan or outside Japan. So technology enables people to work from anywhere, but the measurement of happiness, the mechanism of it is something that I'm yet to fully understand. Is it really about the hours spent on working or easier access to something, or what are the secret source of higher level of satisfaction?
It's thank you for the question, first of all, and it's a very complicated, by the way, equation, and it's always a work in progress, and it depends, to be honest, from an organization to another, and from, I will say, not even country to another. It's actually even inside the same country, you will find, you know, corporations adapting it from a region to another, because it's, or even inside the same company, it's about the persona. You don't measure satisfaction of engineers in the same way you measure satisfaction of salespeople, and that's also something part of our technology. And I have to say in advance that I hope I'm not coming, you know, across like I'm saying our technology, but it's something that I believe in, which is truly understanding the persona of people, and understanding the persona not by just a random, you know, grouping, which is this is an engineer or this is the salesperson, is understanding, you know, dynamically what you know, how he interacts with the digital workplace or with the workplace. What are his needs? Does he work early in the morning and later in the afternoon? Or, you know, with which other groups he connect? And luckily enough, we are capable to do that. We are capable truly to understand every single employee as if it was one VIP. We don't group them under random group. So when we do that, we are capable actually to adapt the questions that are asked, how we sense, you know, their satisfaction or their frustration. And as I said before, we combine that with the technical measurement that we are measuring every single day and every single minute. And the combination of those, when it is adapted to the persona, I will not say it gives actually a scientific or mathematical result, frankly speaking, but in terms of correlation, it's quite accurate. I will say at 75%, you know, to have a real assessment and a real understanding of what is happening. But whether Johnson and Johnson, whether Amex or EY or the people we work with, it's not enough. So after having that first assessment, of course, they will do exactly what Ilan was talking about, which is as well, having the personal interaction and the personal group interaction with people to go through that and better understand it.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I think it's fascinating to hear. I love the word empathy that you used, because everything we're speaking about today is about getting to understand the human and be able to help the human. And a lot of that is about taking the perspective of and using different tools and technologies and assessments and guidelines to take the perspective of a human working in an organization and living their lives and to make that life better. So just in interest of time, I'd like to summarize a few takeaways, and then I'll pass it to you, Naoshi, to say thank you and wrap up. But first of all, I'm fascinated in this panel to hear that, and I'm inspired to hear that organizations and governments are taking a broader view of a holistic view of the human. So we're looking beyond pure profit to say, who are the humans working for us? How do we give them a sense of purpose? How do we contribute to the communities and allow people a sense of purpose and fulfillment through their contribution? And that changes mental health and vitality. And through giving organizations a common framework, a language, tools, assessments, that can actually be measured and tracked, they can go from knowledge through to action and make some steps forward to really support the mental health, the vitality, and the well-being of their workforce and everybody within it. So I'm quite encouraged and inspired by these three panel members. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll pass it to Naoshi and our Japanese contingent.
ありがとうございます。私の感想ですけれども。
Thank you very much. I'd like to share with you my comment. I really like to visit Awaji Island. Please come visit. Yes, and Switzerland as well. I'd like to go back soon so that I can refresh my understanding about how people should live, because we have a real life and we also have a virtual life in cyberspace. Both will have to be merged in the future. That's the era we live in. That will enrich us and that will pose a lot of challenges. However, through the panel, as everybody had consistently said, what is important is people's happiness. That's the purpose of all our work. And that's something we were able to confirm in both of the panels, and as a result, we realized that there's no difference between Japan and Switzerland in this respect. Because we have these common aspects, we can learn from each other and we can progress together. And between Japan and Switzerland, we have wonderful panel members to speak, and we talked about vitality and well-being, which are the core of us human beings, and that was really a blessing, my opportunities. And I would like to express my deepest appreciation to all of you who participated. I will be visiting Awaji Island, and I hope to see you. Thank you very much, Alison, and people in Switzerland. Thank you very much.
Let me join you in thanking the speakers for these really insightful reflections on various levels. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you really, Naoshi, Alison in Lausanne, for the excellent moderation, for your teamwork in leading us through these two discussions. And thank you, the two of you, but also other colleagues at IMD, for your really significant contributions to this economic forum. Now, to wrap up, I would like to pass the floor to the third organizing partner, and that is the Swiss Chamber of Commerce and Industry here in Japan. The chamber is tonight represented by its president, Andre Zimmermann, and I would like to pass him the floor to wrap up. Thank you, Andre, and thank you also for your personal investment and the great collaboration over the past months. Thank you.
Gregor, thank you very much for your kind words. And I also can only follow up on what you mentioned in regard to the topics we heard today. I believe it was really insightful, extremely complex. I think our time was definitely far too short to actually tackle these issues, but I think everybody was able to take something out of this and take home and maybe even implement that. But before we go into that part, I would like to first express our gratitude and thanks to our esteemed speakers. In the first panel, Mr. Hazama, Dr. Yano, and Mr. Georgin in Switzerland. And in the second panel, Yamamoto-san and Mrs. Kocher and Zaid-san. And for that also, I would like to mention, of course, in particular, those who actually made these panels really interesting and lively, and that is our talented moderators from IMD in Switzerland, Dr. Alison Meister, and here our good friend Naoshi Takatsu. Quite frankly, their discussion, their dedication to make this forum happen, their work over basically 1 year, today we receive the fruit for their efforts and work. Thank you very much. Of course, we won't forget the Swiss Embassy. A big thank you goes to our ambassador, Dr. Baum, who made this possible to hold it in this prestigious environment. And there, I would like to particularly mention Onishi-san, because she held all the strings together. Without her great work, we definitely would not celebrate the success we have today. Then nothing is free of charge. What would we have done without our dear and generous sponsors? You can see them on the list here. I really like to express our humble thanks for their support. Thank you very much. Now, reflecting on the two panels, it's quite difficult to actually pick one particular thing or topic to take home. But in the first panel, the role of technology in supporting vitality, I think very, very important here is that we have tools now which are neutral, and that makes it much easier for people to actually open up and share, because we all are more vulnerable than we believe ourselves. And very often we do not actually read our inside alarm messages, and we just drag on too long until we have, as we heard, burnouts. That's already a very late stage, and we can do much better by being much, much closer to the reality, and technology can actually tell you, hey, there is something you should be careful about. You should be maybe thinking about, even when you wake up, smile at the ceiling, try to be positive before you think about all the challenges you have ahead on that day. So here, the synergy between people, the support, and the technology is something which we now today really can benefit from. We heard about that today in this panel, and I think we can also take something out of that and maybe implement it in our own company as well. On the second panel, well-being at work, how organizations support employee vitality. I really like the mandala from, it's like a mandala really, because something which definitely is important, that we have an environment, and that is not only at your work desk. This is something you really have to take as a whole, and that means the work-life balance, the environment you are working in. You talked about 3 times the space for living instead of a small, very, very small apartment in Tokyo. In Japan, everything seems to be focused on Tokyo. In Switzerland, everything is diverse. IMD is in Lausanne, then we got universities here and there. Bern, the capital, but then again, for example, law is in Lausanne, international businesses are in Geneva, etc., etc. So here the diversity is very important, which we think in Japan could do a lot better by really bringing businesses out into the country. So Awajishima is a fantastic idea to actually do that more with the Japanese businesses, move out of Tokyo or at least part of it, and actually bring pride to the local environment. Here, everything has to be Tokyo, but I think if you bring pride, happiness to a local area, business will follow and the quality will improve like that. So here also again, empathy, working together with people. I think that was a very important part in that session, that we really need to work not only in a company, but work together. And if people feel that they are basically taken care of and everybody cares, empathy, then it's going to work. So here again, also when you go back to your job, think about that. How are your neighbors at the next desk, whatever, doing? How are they feeling? This is not only management employee thing, it's basically something which needs to come together. With this, I would like to close and thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you.